Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Essential Libertarian. I'm Kareem Mays, your host. We are giving you the tools for self-governance, and I have my amazing co-host, the one, the only, Daniel Vitro. What is up, Daniel?
I am all right. Kind of, laughing at the whole Elon Musk, Joy Reid, sort of Senator Warren sort of clash. Very funny, very made me laugh. Definitely made me laugh when he called her Senator Karen. Made me laugh a little. I can't lie.
That was funny. She's like, pay more taxes. I think he pays like 15 billion or something like that in taxes. So I'm not going to get into that too much because that was just a funny internet diss. I got some spicy things. As Tim Pool would say, we got some spicy content for you. So before we get into all of that, if you want to keep the decentralized revolution going, the Ron Paul revolution, if you want to keep the ideals of Murray Rothbard alive, you can do so at the LP Mises Caucus, which you can find at lpmisescaucus.com. You can enter your name, last name, email address, and sign up to be a delegate, be part of the decentralized revolution, and take back your freedom. So the first thing I want to talk about is I'm a pretty big, consumer of Joe Rogan's podcast and Dave Rubin. And the big reason is mainly because if I don't like the Daily Wire or like Breitbart or any of those. You know why? Because I know what opinions I'm generally going to get. Yeah. I can almost take any issue and be like, I know what so-and-so is going to give me a conservative opinion. Even when they come here, Kareem's going to probably give me a libertarian and cat. Okay, fine. But Joe Rogan has people of all kinds. And he, as far as I'm concerned, him and Lex Friedman and Rubin do a pretty good job of like, I'm not the expert. You can go ahead and tell me what you know, and I'll ask questions. And that's, to me, why he's so good. And Jordan Peterson hit the nail on the head. That's why people like Joe Rogan. He doesn't try and be like, oh, I know about doctor stuff. I'm an MMA guy, but he gets over.
Yeah, he's dumb enough to he's dumb enough to be stupid, meaning like he's not afraid to not know something, right? Like the average individual, let's just say, the average individual might be interested in stuff medical doctors do, interested in sort of virology, but most people, they're kind of scared when it comes to having the idea of having a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour talk with someone who's way more knowledgeable. Hey, Joseph, I see you in the chat. Way more knowledgeable than they are. But Joe Rogan, on the other hand, is like, nah, fuck it, man. I'm willing to be dumb to learn from this person. And he's done that time and time again. And if you actually listen to Rogan talk and you go back for his podcast years and years back, you see that he has absorbed so much of the knowledge he's learned from his guest. And not only has he absorbed it, he uses it. He knows stuff when it comes to when it comes to coronavirus. He knows the studies. He knows the data. He's looked at a lot of these statistics. He's looked at a lot of the numbers, and he points it out. He brings up articles. He knows his shit when he's talking, and he's very good at admitting when he's not quite confident on a subject, which is why he's so great. He's so humble, and I really respect Joe Rogan. I'm sorry, I'm fanboying a little bit.
Yeah, hey, I think a lot of people like him, especially like, when he put that journalist to the grind over, alternative treatments. And I think one good thing about him is that is, to me, a sign of intelligence. If I just sit here and say, I know everything when I don't know something about something, I know things about computer science, but hey, if somebody talks to me about like how, what's the difference between architectural things like Art Deco, I'm going to say, I don't know. To me, it all looks the same. Like, it all looks the same. If someone asks me questions about like knitting, I don't know too much about that. So I'll just say I don't know. Now, I had Peter McCulloch on recently. Now, McCulloch's pretty big name. People were laughing at me for this because someone put like a gangster life on the video I sent. But if we're really looking at his qualifications, he's a former vice chief of internal medicine at Baylor University Medical Center. He's a professor at Texas A&M University. He's one of the most widely cited authors of research in his field and testified before the U.S. Senate in 2020. So a lot of people, and I'll give people credit. A lot of people said like, okay, Kareem, you're getting sources from like InfoWars or things like that, or like even me, myself, I'll admit, like I look at a lot of alternative news and stuff, but Kareem, we want like a super, whether it's an authority thing, whether it's because it makes them feel better, whether they are committing the logical fallacy of appeal to authority, which, Joe, if you're watching, I think that's a logical fallacy. We want someone who's qualified, right? We want someone, oh, this dude, that was the big thing about Fauci. Cornell, he has this degree.
I mean, he hasn't practiced in almost over 2 decades or something like that. Listen, one thing I want to say about Peter McCulloch is he is, you can look this up, the most highly cited doctor when it came to early COVID treatment, the most cited doctor when it came to all early COVID treatment. He worked with hundreds and hundreds and thousands of patients that have COVID, and he's been sort of at the forefront of the early COVID treatment movement. And as he talks about, and we're probably going to go over, it seems that there's been this push, and it's happened for a while, that the mainstream media and a lot of corporations and pharmaceutical companies just decided it was the vaccine, and anything else that sort of came in conflict with that, they were going to do things to suppress it, sort of cancel doctors, remove certain content off certain websites. And, we don't know exactly why that is, but it definitely seems to be that was the case, and that has been the case.
Yeah, well, to me, I think it's quite clear that you see the merger of these big companies and even companies working with the state, which is, in my opinion, what corporatism is. Joe Walsh asked me the fundamental difference between capitalism and corporatism. Yes, businesses still want to make a profit. When you have corporatism, they can go to their senators and bypass the whole need to compete, and bypass the need to actually deliver something good in the free market and just be completely for profit. If I were to explain it, just capitalism for the rich, socialism for people who are poor, do not have lobbying power. So what did McCulloch talk about? Two big things I think he hit about is he talked about issues with this medical procedure. Specifically, I think he talked about okay, well, there were 60 million, I think, given out, administered. And then out of there was 1,200 people who, passed away. And they said, well, isn't that, I think someone was jogging, or it was his neighbor or something. I don't remember the exact conversation because I watched so much stuff. But he's like, well, that's a small price to pay. He's like, that's pretty scary. Some people are thinking 60 million, 1,200, small price to pay. He also talked about the Nuremberg Code, like we've talked about before. You can't suggest this. You can't be like, hey, man,
the
check
first
this out.
rule is informed consent. And what's crazy is he reminded me of how, he pointed out something that I almost missed, because the normalization of radical things, bad behavior, toxic behavior, abnormal behavior becoming normalized. I wasn't keen to seeing it, but as he said, if you're a medical physician, if you're a practicing physician, if you work for a certain practice, you cannot coerce. And coerce doesn't just mean, hey, maybe get it. It's just like a bribe. You can't suggest to get a treatment one way or another. Now, when it comes to life, when it comes to life dire emergencies, when you are in the hospital and let's just say you've been shot and you can't respond voluntarily, the doctor and your guardian, whoever's with you, can assume privileges. But if you're fully cognitive of the things around you, if you are a citizen of the United States, you cannot be suggested into the vaccine or not, which makes me think of all these medical doctors who have been on CNN. Fauci himself, Biden, although he's not a doctor, the fact that he is literally, people are saying, take the COVID vaccine, that are doctors. They're telling their things. You should take it. You should take it. That in itself is a direct violation of the Nuremberg Code, which blows my mind. It should be, you can take it, and the data proves this and that, but you should or should not. You have the ability to take it.
Yeah. Like I say, here's where you want to go, the LP Mises, but that's not medical advice. But in my opinion, the best thing to do is put the data out there. If you think whatever you're doing is great, is amazing, if you think it's the best thing in the world, which I actually don't think they believe, and I'll show you why in a second. But if you think it's the best thing in the world, if you're like, man, I love this is the best treatment ever, just put the data out there. Put the reasons, put the data, let people do it. You don't have, if it's so good, you wouldn't have to suggest it. Like does anybody have to suggest to you like the items that you use daily? Like, do I have to come up to you and be like, man, Daniel, you have to buy Jordan Peterson's book. You have to. He's the coolest dude ever.
That's what advertisements are. That's what advertisers are. That's what they do. They advertise a product, and people then get money for those advertisers. But what's been going on, and it's sort of been incremental, but radical and exponential at the same time, where in the beginning, we saw Fauci, and there was a clip of him talking to Zuckerberg that was from like over a year ago, but we've seen it going from, this was Fauci's word over a year ago, there might not be a vaccine for at least 1.5 to 2 years, and talking about the efficacy and talking about the necessity for a certain length when it comes to trials to get viable evidence to make sure that it's safe. And then the sort of changing to, it's not safe to safe, then from corporations sort of advertising it to then every commercial for a lot of these mainstream media sites are all advertisements for Pfizer and Moderna, and they're literally shoving the vaccine down your throat. But this is the problem. Not only is it the advertisers, it's doctors, it's politicians, it's lawyers, it's TV personalities. Everyone has become a brand marketing associate for the vaccine, which is deadly. I mean, when you have everyone saying to get this medical treatment everywhere all the time, it tends to have dire detrimental effect, because if everyone hears from every corner, everywhere in their culture and in institutions that they should get this, there is no other option. Well, then the idea that wouldn't be reinforced in them is ludicrous. And we know one thing that's important about not only breaking habits, but starting habitual habits is the reinforcement of the dopamine reward system, right? We know that the difference between reinforcement and reward is that a reward is something that happens in the ventral tegmental area, which is located in the brain, which then releases the neurotransmitter dopamine and sends that to the hippocampus, sends that to the frontal cortex, sends that to the nucleus accumbens. But reinforcement is simply reinforcing a certain kind of behavior, which is what's going on here, except it's on a mass scale. And it's very scary to see this sort of collective psychological psychosis that's been going on with this medical treatment, because most people don't know that they can get treatment other than the vaccine for COVID. And why don't they know? Because Tim Pool, I went to the hospital. Tim Pool went to the hospital. They say, we can't do anything for your COVID unless you're dying and you can't breathe. We'll put you on a ventilator. Other than that, it's like the flu. Go and wait and just sit. How many lives were lost because certain hospitals did not offer up things like monoclonal antibodies and even like hydroxychloroquine? And whether you like if that's controversial or not, I get it. But all these treatments that could have been offered that would have saved thousands of lives. It's scary. It's very scary, man.
But he actually says why it is. He says basically, and to me, I think it's quite clear, like it's not a crazy thing to suggest. There's money in one treatment, which is the establishment medical procedure, and there's no money in the other things. And look, I'm even the guy who's saying, test other things out. I want to see more tests. I want to see more tests on everything. I want to see more tests on vitamin D. I want to see more tests on everything, like patients who did this, patients who didn't do that, patients who intermittent fast. Let's see the data. Look, I'm not one of those guys that's going to say like, oh, okay, well, I know because I'm not a doctor. I don't know, like Joe Rogan, I want to see the studies on what some of these alternative treatments do, monoclonal antibodies and other stuff, and then we can make a decision. You just look at the data and you make a decision. But why is that? He says there was an intentional, very comprehensive suppression of early treatments in order to promote what? Fear, suffering, isolation, hospitalization, and death. Exactly what you're talking about, Daniel. Exactly what you're talking about. And it was completely organized and intentional in order to create acceptance for and promote this mass medical procedure. And he also said that only about 500 doctors, that is like a fraction of a fraction, know what's going on. And there's about 1 million, which 340 million, 330 million in the United States. That sounds about right. I think it was a pretty good interview. A lot of people liked it. I saw Jack Lloyd, you know, he was just on recently. He said it was pretty good. I think it's worth checking this out, whether it's on We Are Change or just watch the whole thing. Heck, go on the Joe Rogan Experience. Look at Dr. Peter McCullough. The nice thing is, I don't think McCullough has anything to gain from this. Neither does Joe Rogan. It was already a successful podcast. They could just sit back and say, hey, no, we're not going to talk about this. Let's just talk about, you know, sports or this or a nice, safe subject. But I think this is one of the guests that's really worth it, because he's not like a media personality. He's not someone who, you know, is just an administrative doctor. He's the most cited guy out of all the doctors who were talking about it. If you were like Kareem, who, like you were saying, Daniel, most cited guy, who has the most good information, or who would you turn to with the most experience? It'd be Dr. Peter McCullough, I think. You can disagree with that, but that's who I think. This is the guy to watch. I definitely recommend, just not because I'm a Joe Rogan fan. If you don't like Joe Rogan, that's fine. But I would even say, if you don't, check out Joe Rogan. Peter McCullough might shed some light on some things. I don't think there's any reason, even if you're not into it, to not take a look at this. I can't think of a reason you wouldn't want to watch this. And speaking of that, talking about, do they think it really works? Well, found a little conversation between CEO Mark Zuckerberg. Thanks for letting me stream on your platform. I want to give Zuck the old highlight and Dr. Fauci. This isn't like a mainstream story, but basically, I don't know if you saw this video, Daniel, but can I play it real quick?
Yeah, go for it. I saw it, but yeah, I don't mind watching it again.
Okay.
The first time, if it happened, that a vaccine that looked good in initial safety actually made people worse. There was the history of the respiratory syncytial virus vaccine in children, which paradoxically made the children worse. One of the HIV vaccines that we tested several years ago actually made individuals more likely to get infected.
Okay, so it's not super long, but and this is not something the mainstream media will ever talk about. That's why I wanted to talk about it. That's why I have a platform. I'm going to be on YouTube, you know, Odyssey and Rumble. But I want to make this clear that it's interesting what they say in front of the public, what they say on CNN, and then behind closed doors, you know, they're like, hey, this is the thing. Like, I remember even before this whole thing started, even before all this craziness started, I remember the debate between Hillary and Trump. And she said, let's create a no-fly zone for Syria. And that was pretty serious at the time with what was going on in Syria, because I want to protect Syrians. And then she went to, I think, a Goldman Sachs type thingy. Like, I guess Goldman Sachs has events where they talk. And she said, no, it'll actually kill more Syrians. And I'm like,
yeah, like, they're shapeshifters, man. And here's the thing with politicians is like this, right? Politicians don't have to take a solid form. Right? Why? Why don't they have to take a solid form? Is because the people who are dumbed down, who lack not necessarily intelligence but political awareness, will let the politicians take the form of a liquid and then worm and move around all of the people and literally change form as the people change their ideas. So as ideas change and as sort of the people's perspective on certain political issues change, gay marriage, whatever it may be, they morph along with the people's opinions, but they're not doing it for the people or by the people. They're doing it to keep the power that they have and to stay in political positions. They don't believe what they're saying. They just believe that you are changing, and they're moving with that change. But they definitely, on a moral level, on an ethical level, most likely don't agree with it. They just want to keep getting reelected. And again, just like Bruce Lee said, you know, they're changing like water to whatever the political dialogue changes to. So whatever it goes from, you remember in 2008 when, you know, Biden, 2000, probably 10, 12, whatever it was, talked about the Defense Against Marriage Acts and was like, we're debating Hades in a handbasket, like completely way against, marriage, and talked about the act that he signed to help protect
Yes.
not gay marriage and standard marriage. And Obama was the same way and said in his campaign in 2008 and in 2012 that he was still not for gay marriage. And then sure enough, he got pressure from people in 2013, I think it was.
Yes.
So again, you have to understand, these people aren't changing their perspectives. They are not evolving. They're not even devolving. They're switching what they think the public wants to see to keep them in power. That's it.
Yeah. Hey, just, if you tell, what was the quote? If you tell a lie and the lie's big enough and you tell it long enough, people will believe it. And the same thing with Hillary Clinton. Like, one thing Jorgensen mentioned pretty much is, they all flip. They flip so much. Like, she was then she's all for gay marriage. And then even Trump with Syria. It's like, we're going in, out. I'm like, dude, like, pick something, like flip a coin and like do a foreign policy move. But like, give me something. But it's all like, what they want to hear. They hit their advisors up. This is new. This is what's in. Say this. Okay, I'll say this. So that's one thing I want to let people know, because there's a lot of people who still say, well, the science is good. What's the science? The people really don't believe in science. They believe in public opinion. And they're going to use science as a backdrop, as kind of a shield to hide behind that, when real science is just questioning things like what we're doing right here. You have a hypothesis. I believe this is BS. And then you actually question it. You change independent and dependent variables, in my opinion, until you get a good substrata and a consistent substrata of actual results. And then you publish some papers, and then people publish other papers, and you have a dialogue. And that's how you come to scientific truth, at least in my opinion. Last but not least, then we'll get on to some pretty cool foreign policy. I like to do that. But the CDC, kind of funny enough, admitted, finally, what did they admit? This procedure is actually causing, because people are like, why don't you want to get it? And I said, like, look, I said, these things take 10 years. Like, even if you were completely for all this stuff, you have to admit they take 10-year trials to get this right. And I got like hepatitis and all those fun other ones. I forget, like the MMR or whatever. So they're like, oh, you're just against all these procedures and all this stuff. No, I actually want to see the real data and see what happens with all this stuff. And then when bad stuff happened, I'm like, well, I bet you they're going to cover it up. But like Buddha said, I think it's Buddha, there are 3 things you can't hide: the sun, the moon, and the truth. And they can't hide the truth forever. So I don't like the CDC. They should be completely defunded. But I kind of like what I got here. They finally admitted these procedures are causing myocarditis, heart problems, blood clots. But the issue is they're not going to stop, because government has no incentives to stop. And I actually do believe other companies, because this is how corporatism works. Like, if Joe Walsh is watching, this is a textbook definition. It's corporate power merged with state power. The corporations want to keep doing what they want to do, so they acquiesce state power, and then they effectively become hand in hand with them. But they just have a different logo and a different perception. So it looks like, oh, wait, there's 2 separate entities, one entity. So just to get into some of the reported adverse events, myocarditis and pericarditis, which I believe is just in kids, after these different medical procedures are given out, happens. And it's basically when the heart muscle
and just to note, Kareem, that there has been a large examples of kids getting adult doses of vaccines, and pericarditis and myocarditis are almost exactly the same. One is just simply weaker than the other, and there's even different levels of myocarditis. So like what we're seeing with the vaccine, as many doctors have pointed out, are very relative to other cases we've seen of myocarditis, are more than just the typical mild case, and are very, very, very sometimes strong, debilitating, sometimes even kill. Right, even kill the patients who get it. And the fact that along with the vaccines, I think we're seeing, I don't want to get this wrong for YouTube, but I know I can say this much, hundreds of more cases of myocarditis than we were seeing on average each year. And then even thousands, because as McAuliffe points out in the interview, there was a lot of underreporting goes under VAERS, and that's with everything, right? VAERS is known to be underreported, and also the whole idea that VAERS is not accurate because, your daughter or anyone can, put a report. Over 85% of all VAERS reports are made by medical doctors and physicians and nurses. Only 10 to 15% or so are actually made by the patients, so they're fairly accurate, underreported, and this is a legitimate thing, and it's to a degree where we're seeing like 5-6 times what we normally see per year. So I mean, that's substantial enough to where I think, hey, you got to take a look at it at least.
Yeah, that actually explains. This is a Health Impact News. If you want to check this out, basically you can see the adverse events page. You can take a look at all the data here, there's quite a bit of data here. Take a look at it, and then I'd say compare it to like the actual adverse events page, and see what you think. I'm not telling anybody to believe me. I don't think anybody should go off belief. I think they should look at this article and say, okay, take a look, but I'm still skeptical. Look at the events page, look at what's going on, compare this to the adverse events, and then make a decision. It also explains what pericarditis is, Pfizer myocarditis, and it actually gives real accounts of like people and then what all happened with them. And you can actually see this is some pretty tough stuff, in my opinion. So this is not the thing for like the faint of heart. So if you want to do it, definitely take a look.
Can you imagine though? Can you imagine being a 16-year-old or even a 10-year-old kid, a 12-year-old kid, and getting this vaccine that you don't know anything about? You have no information on whether this is good. And on top of that, you are not made aware. And in a lot of cases, the parents who are being told, again, I will repeat that, told by doctors to administer this medical treatment to the child, not saying the parent is administering it, but they're telling the parent to get the child a specific medical treatment, and that child and sometimes that parent having no knowledge of some of these effects, no knowledge, right? We know that. Yeah. We know that there's a there's a lack of knowledge when it comes to the side effects of the vaccine. We've seen videos of hundreds and hundreds of videos of vaccines being administered. If you want to find one where they list off all of these things on the insert, I have not seen them. I have not seen it. And as far as I'm concerned, that is necessary. You cannot have informed consent if you're not aware of the effects and the consequences that come from this certain medical treatment, as with Adderall, as with ibuprofen, Tylenol. They all list the side effects on the back. And when you see the commercials, right, when you see all those commercials, even though it plays it really fast, it still plays those side effects. Now, I've seen a lot of vaccine commercials for COVID. I've seen a damn lot. I've never seen them list the side effects. I've never seen them list the labels, the warnings, myocarditis and pericarditis, ever in their commercials. Ever. I've never seen it. You know why they don't? Because they're purposely, intentionally going against the Nuremberg Code, and they're doing it so overt that they think that you're not going to say anything, you're not going to notice. It will become the new normal, where commercials don't even list off side effects for anything, especially vaccines. And if you want to send me a commercial of any Pfizer, Moderna, of them doing a commercial about the COVID-19 vaccine, whatever the corporation is, and them listing off all of the effects, myocarditis, pericarditis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, all these effects. I've never seen it. That's disturbing. It really is, man.
It's messed up. Well, I'll say one thing, because I like what David Icke said. He's like, when medicines are listing the side effects, those aren't side effects. Those are the effects. Like if I get a huge cramp here, I'm like, oh, it's a side effect. I'm like, oh my God, that's an actual effect. And yeah, some of these commercials are ridiculous. It's like a dude dancing in a field, or people.
I know, it's always like, get the vaccine,
hey, man. I'm like, woo.
Take the injection, just shove it up my butt. Like, it's so overt, man.
Kids like, oh, we're superheroes. I'm like, please stop doing this. Or even with regular drug commercials, like, hey man, I'm chilling, I'm riding my bike. Side effects may include and up to, it's like death, blowing up, spontaneous.
Yeah. Have you seen that? Is that just me? Have you seen a commercial of vaccines that show the side effects? Okay, I just want to make sure.
And honestly, why would you say that? But I'll also take it from an Austrian perspective, looking at human purposiveness. If I have a certain goal, whether it's to make money or to fulfill something written on a piece of stone somewhere, I am not going to say what the side effects are. And the reason is because I have protection from a former Republican president, Ronald Reagan, whether you like him or not. I have the Vaccine Protection Act, so I get protection from talking about my medical procedure. If I don't have to say the bad things that happen, maybe we'll just leave that out. Maybe we'll just leave that out so I can have record profits. Because if they actually say that, they're like, oh, wait, did you say bad things could happen? No. Like, are you required to?
Someone should sue. When it comes to liability as far as the actual consequences, but I think there is grounds for suing when it comes to the commercials, because I'm not aware, and I'm aware of the Vaccines Protection Act under Reagan. I'm aware of the liability, but I'm not aware of them being able to advertise their product without listing the effects. I'm not aware of any doctrine that states that, because we've seen other vaccines that list side effects. We've seen them. So it just seems to me that this specific COVID vaccine, I guess for some reason, is an isolated medical treatment where they feel the need, they don't have to. But again, I'm not going to go too deep. All I know is that if you don't know what is going to happen when you're doing something, it's like you walk out your home. When you go out of your home, would you leave if you knew every time you went out your home there was a car that had a 45% chance of killing you? Well, maybe not. Maybe you're risky. Maybe you do walk out. Anyways, at least you like to know, at least to a certain degree, what is outside of your house. Because if you don't know what is outside of your structure of order, if you're not aware of the chaos around you, it's highly unlikely you will attend to that chaos. Now, that doesn't mean you won't go out into chaos. It just means you like to be aware of the danger around you.
Yeah.
Why do you like to be aware of the danger around you? Because as their actual physical body shows, when it comes to incidental or accidental encountering with chaos or with events that trigger not only a dopaminergic release system, but also mess with our serotonin receptors, but more importantly, our adrenal glands, which are responsible for epinephrine and norepinephrine. Epinephrine would be another word for adrenaline. It's the medical term for adrenaline. And when that adrenaline releases, literally, your pupils dilate, your vision gets clearer, your blood starts to flow at a higher rate, your heart starts to beat, and it starts to burn off calories faster, and you go into a flight or fight mode. If you're aware of that danger, your body will still react in that way, but you'll be able to control it, which is why if you turn around and someone scares you, you jump. But if you know someone's around you, you're ready to throw that fist, and you're most likely to be accurate. Now, the idea that you're going to take this medical vaccine and you have no idea of the dangers, you don't even know where to throw your hand, you don't know where you're going to go, you're not even aware of the chaos that surrounds you. That's dangerous, because I really think that the majority of the population, when it comes to the people getting this inoculation, they don't quite know. They don't know about myocarditis. They don't know about pericarditis. They truly don't know about it, man.
I don't think, because, and also doesn't help because the news media won't. We're one of the only people talking about other than these alternative news sources, because nowhere, unless you're going to Odyssey or Rumble or or Health Impact, nobody, or Peter McCulloch, nobody is talking. And if they do talk about it, I've heard they go real hard on those doctors, like, hey, we want to suggest alternative treatments. We'll take away your license. We'll do this.
Yeah, he was fired for quote unquote. He was fired for spreading misinformation. And he was fired from. He received a standing ovation after he was fired from Baylor for spreading COVID misinformation. So I mean, they're coming after medical doctors. They're coming after the people who are most cited, highly published medical professionals. They don't care. Anyone who speaks against the vaccines, the narrative, the only medical treatment, there is only one way to treat COVID. Point blank, period. Vaccine. And I'm not saying I agree with that, but that is the narrative. That is what the institutions are agreeing with, as far as universities, schools, the media, your government. multiple different corporations, including YouTube, Google, Facebook, and Instagram. This is what they've decided to be the preventative against COVID. It is not anything else. If you've seen Facebook, if you've seen Google, if you've seen YouTube offer monoclonal antibodies, again, send me the links. They don't.
Never.
Why don't they offer monoclonal antibodies as far as showing it? Because their advertisers aren't for monoclonal antibodies. Monoclonal antibodies. They're from vaccine makers. They have money from Pfizer, including CNN, ABC, MSNBC, NBC. They are all paid by Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca. They get billions. On top of that, they get $300 million from Bill Gates. So they're getting millions and billions of dollars from these pharmaceutical companies to offer the only treatment right now is vaccine. And what scares me is that I truly believe at least 50% of the population thinks that.
I believe even more people, or even more people think that, because the information is just not out there. And there's no incentive to do it. You know what they say, the problem with natural immunity is it's free. We can't have that. You know, same issue with that. So speaking of not being accountable, I didn't talk about this story for a while. I probably should have brought it up earlier, but if you're familiar, what happened while they were doing like the Afghanistan thing was completely botched. It was terrible. I'm not going to go as far as saying it was the worst foreign policy decision. I think that was invading Iraq, but it was definitely terrible. That being said, there was a drone strike. They said it took out something, like they keep coming up with these.
I know it took out some children, right? If I'm not mistaken, that not directly, but indirectly killed children.
They said they got some bad guys, whatever it was, and then come to find out it was an aid worker and his kids, and they were just coming to get water. And I'm like, okay, at least I'm not saying any of this is good, but this is kind of, to me, what Elon Musk said, where it's like government's a corporation. The only difference is there is
they have a monopoly on violence.
Yeah, they have a monopoly. If you have a monopoly, you're going to say something like, "Oh, that was my bad. Let me investigate it." Okay, did you investigate it? Did you do anything wrong? Yeah, like kind of like the whole FDA meme, like, "Hey, you recommended this drug. It gave me like an adverse effect. Oopsie, my bad." So yeah, it's the same thing here. No one in the Pentagon, no generals, nobody, no nothing. No drone, none of these dudes are being like held accountable for this. I mean, you would think if a private company did this, there would be people at the wazoo protesting. They would get stuff down. They would get sanctioned against. People would boycott them. There would be bad Yelp reviews. You know, I'm not saying private companies do this, but if you put it in the context of the free market, there'd be some kind of accountability, if not them just being shut down and all put in jail. Or even if they were exonerated, they still wouldn't get any business. That's my argument. So no troops were disciplined in the U.S. strike that took out Afghan citizens. What happened? So nobody's going to get in trouble for the drone strike that killed innocent.
Well, that makes sense. That actually makes a lot of sense when you look at it from a logical perspective of any of the administrations that take office, right? Okay, so why aren't these troops, officers, whatever their actual titles are, why aren't they getting consequenced? Well, because the Biden administration does not want to have to be responsible for malfeasance and incidental carnage and chaos or a mistake. So how do you avoid taking responsibility for a mistake if you're the Biden administration? Well, you don't hold any of those who did the mistake accountable for the mistake, because then that would therefore make it self-evident that there was a mistake. So avoid the mistake entirely. We've seen this with Obama, and I'm sorry, I know there's a lot of people who like Trump. Same thing with Trump. There was a lot of issues that happened, especially militarily, and in the end, I think he did the right thing in a lot of areas when it came to his foreign policy at the end. But again, a lot of presidents have been doing this for a long time, with Iraq, with the beginning of Afghanistan, with Bush, with the killing of 1 million Iraqis, just absurd wars on false pretexts. And who gets responsible? Was Colin Powell, who recently died, a warmonger, an ancient war criminal, the ultimate war criminal, who should be in prison. He should have died in a cell. Yeah. 1 million Iraqis died under a false pretext that he propagated.
Yeah. Like
he
even,
propagated that at the UN. No one else. He did. He should be served. He should be charged with crimes against humanity. Nothing else.
The whole administration did. Even when people were saying like Kareem Condoleezza Rice was on The View, I'm like, oh my God. Like, do you agree with her? I'm like, well, if you put her in a jail cell, I might, she can do it Zoom in her cell if her cellmate's okay with that. That's how far I'm going. Put all these criminal administrations in jail. So what happened here? Because some people don't know what happened here because they're looking just at kind of the news and things. So the Pentagon, which I would personally like to completely defund, said that Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin approved recommendations for improvements in strike operations from generals who lead the U.S. Central Command and Special Operations Command. Based on the findings of independent Pentagon reviewed released last month, there were no recommendations for discipline made by generals, said John Kirby. What happened? The review done by Air Force Lieutenant General Sammy said and endorsed by Austin in November found that there were breakdowns in communication. I don't know if I believe that. In the process of identifying and confirming the target of the bombing, which killed 10 civilians, including 7 children.
Oh, dude, it took out more. I mean, let me say this real quick, very quick. You can look this up. This was of 2017 or 18, I believe. I believe over 90% of all our drone strikes killed civilians. So we have over a 90% fail rate with drone strikes. And over 90% of the time we do drone strikes, they don't kill the people intended and they kill civilians.
Yeah.
That is why. Like literally, is the government that incompetent? You think drone strike, it's like you find a place, you find a person in the place, you wait for them to not be around people in that place, you lower the explosiveness of the drone strike, and you strike them. But I swear to God, they cannot handle anything.
You know why it doesn't work? Is I'll get it. It's in the next story. But basically, my understanding is like military recruiters, if you're an infantry on the ground, at least you can be like, no, I don't want to engage these people. There's kids here. Okay. If you're a drone operator, from my understanding, a lot of people get recruited like from things like game tournaments or things like that. They want to fly. But when you're a drone operator, you're looking at a screen and you're taking someone out. There's no like human connection. Like, do you feel bad after you play Call of Duty?
That's true. That's actually a good point, man.
If you play Call of Duty or Battlefield or any of the new ones out now, I'm playing Halo Infinite. But if you play any of these games, which I have, and you take out, to me, that's kind of what it is. You're looking at a screen and you're like, all they said was he concluded it was a tragic mistake not caused by misconduct or negligence. I'm like, what is it then? What is it? Like, okay, yeah, it's a tragic mistake. Like, whoopsies, my bad. But we didn't really mess up, is what they're saying. And then the 2 commanders agreed with the findings. They didn't find anything for discipline. As far as I'm concerned, and this is the problem with all the presidents, George Bush, Obama, and Trump expanded the drone strikes as well. That's one issue that really kind of got me with him on like anti-war stuff, and said like, okay, well, the Pentagon can just make decisions to do it. They don't have to like confirm anything, and you just take them out. So you don't have to even reveal. We don't even know what the numbers are now. So as far as I'm concerned, they need to completely scrap the drone program. It doesn't work. It doesn't actually even, as far as I'm concerned, even if you're making the argument that the drones are effective in taking people out, it doesn't even take out like the people you want.
Yes, exactly.
It doesn't even take out the quote unquote insurgents. It's, in my opinion, dehumanizing, and it's a waste of taxpayer money if that's all you care about. If you just come and be like, well, it's just a waste of money. It doesn't work. It's dehumanizing. It's just complete garbage. So as far as I'm concerned, defund the drones, defund the whole drone program, and defund the Pentagon. Defund them completely. My own perspective is the states could figure it out under the articles. So that's all I have to say about this. They're a corporation. Like when people scream, Kareem, we don't want private mercenaries. I get it. But think about it like this. This is just a corporation. The Pentagon is just a corporation with no liability. And you see how they act. This isn't like some weird conspiracy thing. This is just saying, hey, if I have no liability, I'm going to act like this. I'm going to take someone out and just say it was my bad mistake. We're sorry. We'll send you a card and done. So that brings me into another guy. A lot of people don't know this dude. Maybe you do, but we all know Chelsea Manning. We all know Snowden, and we all know Assange, who I want to talk about last story. But do you know who Daniel Hale is?
Daniel Hale. That name sounds familiar, but no, I'm not like entirely aware of him.
Okay, so I'll just break this down real quick. Daniel Hale is, in my opinion, hero, or at least he's a person who came to conscience and came to be like, I did something that was wrong, which is pretty cool. It's good to.
Not that he did it wrong, but that he took accountability for doing it.
Yeah. I'll have 100 times more respect, even if the person's an evil person. Like I always say, one thing I do like about some of the crazy Democrats is at least they come out and they're like, I'm a socialist, communist, don't want to take your stuff and redistribute. I'm like, cool. And the Republicans are like, Kareem, I like freedom, but we need a little socialist. Can't we have these socialist programs? Can't we do these? And I'm like, no, you can't. Or otherwise you don't really believe in free markets. But Daniel Hale is a dude who's been sentenced to 45 months wrongly for a drone leak. His claim is, I'm here because I stole something that was never mine to take, a human life. Who was he? He was a former U.S. Air Force intelligence analyst that was sentenced to 45 months in prison. Tuesday, this is a little bit old, but Tuesday, after pleading guilty to leaking a trove of government documents exposing inner workings and severe civilian costs of the U.S. military's drone program. Appearing in the Alexandria, Virginia courtroom, the 33-year-old Hale told U.S. District Judge Liam O'Grady that he believed it was necessary to dispel the lie that drone warfare keeps us safe and that our lives are more worth than theirs. Damn, that, as that meme says, this MFer spitting. I'm here because I stole something that was never mine to take. Precious human life. Hale said, I couldn't keep living in a world in which people pretend that things weren't happening that were. Please, Your Honor, forgive me for taking papers instead of human lives. And basically, O'Grady said that Hale was not being prosecuted for speaking out about the drone program, killing innocent people, and that he could have been a whistleblower without taking any of these documents.
You know what pisses me off, and I'm not saying that there's I'm not saying that there's not a legality here to get him arrested and that he doesn't deserve to be charged. I'm not saying that, but it does seem to me that it's more difficult to expose your government, especially in America, and to be a quote unquote whistleblower if what you're exposing is if it is actually matters, if it's very, with Snowden, with Assange, if you're exposing elites, if you're exposing certain aspects of the government that have to do with other aspects, if it's certain officials, if it's certain bureaucrats, bureaucracies, like it depends on the level of the information you are taking and you are propagating and articulating. And most of the time, if that information really is something crucial to the government, not crucial in the sense national security is they'll say for everything, but crucial in the sense that it's very secretive and they don't want people knowing it, boom, you're basically not even American anymore. And we'll prosecute you under the Espionage Act, which was used more times under the President Obama than in the history of the act itself. In the history of the act itself, which means you do not have the right to a lawyer or to your First Amendment right under the FISA Act, in FISA court. You don't even get to speak for yourselves. So basically, it's a court where they speak about what happened. You don't get to say anything. And then you every time anyone's been charged under the Espionage Act, they've always been arrested and imprisoned. There's been no one who has become innocent facing the FISA courts under the Espionage Act ever. So it's basically court where you're guaranteed to go to prison and you can't say anything about it because there's a gag order, because it's a secret court. And the court in itself, in a lot of ways, its inception seems to be completely unconstitutional against the Fourth Amendment. So, I mean,
Yeah, you
Again,
need a warrant.
that's crazy, man.
Yeah. For one, it's unconstitutional. You need a warrant to go after people. That's my big thing.
Yeah,
like,
well, it's a FISA warrant. You have to understand. They make like it's like we need a light bulb to light up this room. It's like we need a gun. That they'll make anything to use to whatever their idea, whatever their concept, whatever they're trying to do. They'll create any imaginary thing as a pretext to create and use that larger idea. It's like we need a war and we need money. And we need the military-industrial complex to be happy and to keep pushing. Okay, well, we need nuclear weapons in Iraq. We need weapons of mass destruction. Let's create them. Let's make a false intelligence report. Let's propagate that false intelligence report to Colin Powell, although there was a report that said there was no evidence. So then let's have him lie about the intelligence report, and let's get 1 million Iraqis dead, and let's get the war machine pumping.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they did. And that, in my opinion, every person in that administration should be criminally prosecuted. No holds bar, no nothing, just criminally prosecute them. Now, what I'll say is this. Yeah, you can argue that Daniel Hale, Edward Snowden, a few other people took documents and broke the law. What I find funny is the governments, by doing this, are breaking their own laws. They're breaking that. Like, what good is a law if you can't rewrite it? Like,
exactly.
If you ever listened to the Clash I did in my punk rock days, they said you have the right to free speech as long as you're not dumb enough to actually try it. Like, hey, I have an opinion that goes against the mainstream narrative, and I found like certain information that says so. The government themselves say, hey, if you see something, say something. Seems like if you say something like Chelsea Manning, like if you see something like Assange, if you see something like Edward Snowden, and you say something, well, then they're going to come after you. And even worse, I would say, is I saw an interview with Hillary, and they said, well, can we let Snowden back? Or so he's like, well, he did break the law. So this, I'm like, so did you. What makes you like he broke the law? Like, okay. Like, isn't that like a little bit hypocritical? Aren't we calling? Isn't that the
Listen, Kareem, she said she's probably running again in 2024. I actually might get on my hands and knees and pray that Hillary runs and she wins the primary, because if it's a Hillary and Trump race, I'm sorry. I know. I just want to see Hillary get crushed. And it's a little bit resentful. It's a little bit self-destructive. It's a little angering. It's sort of the darkness inside me. But I just want to see like Hillary get destroyed. And it doesn't even have to be Trump. But like, here's the deal. Democrats are falling in the polls for independents, for registered Democrats, and for obviously conservatives. And People's Civics has multiple polls on people's perspective on the economy. Again, more leftist than people on the left are seeing the economy worse. Less people are approving of Joe Biden's presidency. And the number, whether you like them, I'm not saying that they're going to like be this saving grace here. Numbers for the Republican Party are going up. So here's what I predict. And this is what I think has a possibility of happening. It just depends on what Trump, how he tends to go about it, right? Regardless, there's going to be obviously a Republican primary, right? Regardless. Now, let's say everyone mutually agrees, okay, let's just let Trump do it. Let's make it easy. Let's not cause too much trouble. And, they do the play, but, it ends up being Trump. But let's say that that's not the case, right?
It could be DeSantis.
I want, and I mean this seriously, I think one of the best options for winning, especially against, I mean, it's not, I'm almost entirely sure it's not going to be Biden. Okay. It's going to be Harris. It's going to be Clinton. It's going to be Buttigieg. Mark my words on December 16th, 2021. It will be one of those three people. I'm almost positive it will not be Biden. He might not even be alive then. So, I mean, that's also a scenario. But
I was going to suggest someone else.
Rand Paul.
Yes.
I really, really, really think it could be the year of Rand Paul in 2024. I'm serious. The way that I've been seeing the Mises Caucus and the way that they've been organizing, the fact that they've already overtaken the LP, the Libertarian Party, basically, and become the more dominant Libertarian Party. I mean, dude, there is a lot of energy. There is a lot of grassroots stuff going on with the Libertarian movement. I think if Rand Paul will not necessarily denounce being conservative, but if he just says, I'm running as a Mises Caucus individual, and he just fully takes on the stance of libertarian, just as his father did, Dude, I really think he could win, and I think it would just be so good. I want Rand Paul to win. Like, out of anyone, I want him to win, man.
Well, what about our favorite comedian? You know,
I know, obviously, but I just don't see that as even being in the play. Like, it just, I just find it, you know what I mean? Dude, of course I would want him to, Dave Smith to win, but it's like, it's just, I don't, dude, if he gets to even go in the debates, that will surprise me.
If I will say this. The only big thing that we have is he gets on Kennedy, he gets on Tim Pool, he gets on Rogan, he gets on that, and people now are kind of sick of CNN, the mainstream media, in my opinion, whether you think it's rigged or not. A big part of the rigging, whether you want to look at a big part of the election. I'm not saying it was, YouTube. I'm not saying what it was or wasn't, but I'll say this. A lot of the things came from the mainstream media. Now that they're dying, and we have alternative media, and everybody I know who's anybody, I'm like, Joe Rogan, they're like, I watch him. Or at least I have an opinion about him. Maybe they don't.
Look at Yang. Look at Andrew Yang. I mean, Andrew Yang got into the debates, and he had a damn good campaign, and he wasn't a politician. So maybe you're right. And maybe I'm sort of wrong. Maybe I'm being pessimistic. Maybe
I don't know.
Smith has more of a chance of getting into the debates than I think. And you know what? You're right, man.
All we need to do, in my opinion, if we can get him on the stage, I just say, hey, things are bad enough that I'm going to try the impossible now. I'm going to put a bunch of things in Shiba Inu. Hope it goes out. I'm going to go for
We'll put our Shibas together. But here's what I want to ask you, Kareem, real quick. I want to ask you this question: DeSantis, Rand Paul, Dave Smith, or 4 questions. Dave Smith or Trump? Which one? Okay, which one would you rather have out of all of them just for president? Now, I know you're biased in the Mises perspective, but
no.
Which one would you want? Like, you think that would be the best for freedom, that would be the strongest, that would get the most out of, that would actually go against the deep state? And which one do you see is most likely to win?
Okay. If I'm being honest, Rand Paul, because having campaign experience, regardless of what your beliefs are, is important. That's why I said,
you're right.
Hey, Justin Amash should run. Why? Not because Justin Amash is like he's pretty good. He's a high, he takes a lot from Hayek. He's pretty good libertarian, I think. I like Amash, but he's not, as far on the libertarian spectrum as it, but that's fine. He has actual experience winning. He knows what to do and what not to do. I would even suggest in the DNC, maybe they actually say, I want to win. And I don't know who it is. The suggestions you have are good, but Elizabeth Warren could be one. Tulsi Gabbard could be one. And Andrew.
You said Tulsi Gabbard?
Or Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard. And heck, who knows?
I'm sorry, dude. It's too rigged. Listen, if it was real, if there was an actual Democratic, like, a DNC, if there was an actual thing that functioned uncorruptly, or at least semi-uncorruptly, I would say absolutely Tulsi and Yang. Absolutely. They're the two big. And now I wouldn't consider necessarily Tulsi a sort of populist, but definitely Yang. He's definitely a left populist. He's left the sort of Democratic Party.
A lot of people like Yang. On the ground.
He's sort of in his own little party, independent party. I can't remember the name of it. Forgive me. But I definitely think if it wasn't rigged, Yang or Gabbard, if they both run, just because they're so popular, man. They had a big movement.
I think. Okay, I even think if you got like Yang and pick somebody else, they could probably win. I do believe that, even on the bad, because I know people just like love Yang. I'm not saying
I know, you're right.
I think they like his UBI thing and they think they want it to work. I tell them it's a bad idea, but that doesn't deter them. They're like, we love Yang. He's the best dude. He's relatable. He's a cool guy.
Yang or Trump?
I think Yang.
Which one would you rather have is what I'm saying.
They're both socialists. I don't know. I don't think they're both Democrats. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yang or DeSantis?
The hard part is I don't know Yang's foreign policy. Maybe
he's pretty, from what I've heard, and he might change his views. Pretty isolationist, like not really like anti-interventionist. I can say that much. Pretty aligned with Tulsi.
I don't like neither. I would just not vote then or vote for Dave Smith. The hard part is this. I'm going to say some unpopular stuff based on what other people and I've looked at. A lot of people like DeSantis, Greg Abbott, Kristi Noem, are very good on what they did with COVID. I'd say they knocked it pretty much out of the park, except with I think DeSantis, Abbott said like when you get that medical procedure, it goes, we're just not going to do it. And then I think DeSantis said, oh, well, the local things can figure it out, kind of like Youngkin. Okay. But a lot of people now, this whole Rona thing has been everything. So they're like, oh, well, is he good on that or not? Even Tim Pool said, if you're good on that, you can win. If you're bad on that, bye. So, but if you take that away and you're like, okay, other issues do matter. And from what I've seen, there have been some strong I'm not going to say neoconservative, but interventionist tendencies that still exist in the Republican Party. That bug me. And I'm not saying I love Iran. I'm not saying me and the Khomeini are going to hang out, although I would talk to him. I would have a dialogue with him. But people, my biggest aversion of the right is not their handling of COVID, but like them when I hear people all the way from, I feel like DeSantis and all them, I'm going to qualify this by saying good on COVID, but there's some people that scare me still, like Nikki Haley, and they're like, let's get Iran. I'm like, stop.
Yeah.
Stop. How about this? We just treat them the same way. Iran and Israel and Saudi Arabia the same. And if it's possible, let them talk together and iron out the differences.
That's what I would say. It's like, it's so easy though. What blows my mind is, let's just say you're a complete sociopath. Or I'd actually use the term psychopath. Sociopaths are people who don't even bother to act as if they're normal. Psychopaths are very good at faking to make it or pretending to coat their personality with humanistic sort of aspects. Sociopaths, they don't even bother to do that. And when they try, they usually fail because it's very obvious that they're sociopathic. Now, a psychopath, a very evil, malevolent psychopath, let's just say they want to go to office and all they want to do is win the office and become president. There's 3 or 4 major things they would have to do to win. One, say they are absolutely anti-interventionist on without any excuses. There's no justifications. There's no excuses. I will not invade another country, and I will not sanction other countries as a form of a basic threat of war. I will not do that. I will leave Iran. I will get everyone out of all the majority of the Middle Eastern countries, and I will not intervene any more, point blank period. That is my policy. 2, there will be no lockdowns under COVID because I, sadly enough, still see that being an issue. And then I don't think it's going to end. I'm sorry, but let's just say it doesn't end. Okay. And let's just say it's still there, at least aspects of it. All right. No lockdowns and no mandatory vaccines, right? Pure liberties when it comes to the COVID issue. Number 3, economics. We will not spend anything. We will balance our budget and we will not spend any more than we actually make. We will balance the budget. 4, which this one is the one on social issues, right? We attack climate change and we deal with it, but in an objective way. Like put it like this: like there's people who are like, oh, I want to solve climate change, but also I want to allocate way too many resources to an issue that's going to hurt many other people, that's going to damage the economic, the lower economic class by making gas and oil prices higher. But let's just say you have a guy who's again psychopathic, all he wants to win. He could be rational in saying that we have climate change. There's this issue. Let's propagate and let's sort of subsidize nuclear energy, nuclear fuel, and even what is what's his name on Timcast talk about graphene stuff like that, new technology, right? Those 4 things. If you say that, well, dude, those are winning fucking points. They're absolutely winning.
You know what I'd say? All right, guys, I'm elected official. Let's start a crowdfund. What for? Well, Daniel's talked about this. Can we rebuild Wardenclyffe? Can we try that crazy thing? We don't have Tesla, but someone has this plan somewhere. It's probably in the government. So after we defund the intelligence agencies, high intelligence agency that's watching, you'll still get a job. I'll show you how to do Fiverr. No, I won't. I don't like you. But after we defund the intelligence agencies, let's try Nikola Tesla's plans. Let's rebuild Wardenclyffe and see if we can get free energy for everybody. Because I'm the crazy guy who's saying, hey, maybe this whole electrical thingamajiggy thing could work. And then, yeah, I think nuclear energy is a good idea. If that doesn't work, I'm not opposed to looking at other energy sources just because I find this to be a particularly interesting field.
Have I told you? Have I talked to you about my my intelligence sort of theory on how to not necessarily completely abolish the CIA and other agencies, but basically how to abolish what they're doing, almost abolish, right? Inadvertently, but you would be doing it directly. Is you make everything from 10 years ago, everything that the CIA that was done that is not deemed ultra classified regarding national security, unless the information poses a serious risk to people currently in this current government at this state right now, you declassify everything. Absolutely everything gets massive document dumps. You declassify all of it. Dude, you know what that would do to the CIA? I'm sorry, man.
I want a decentralized type of intel, like kind of something like Anonymous, but a bunch of libertarians, and we can work together even with other people and then kind of figure it out. But I don't want a central that scares me. And I don't like, and honestly, I get rid of it. I'm even going to level a thing. But there's one thing about Trump and even the Republicans outside of Iran that scares me. I'm going to kind of like slam him here, even though he won't see me, or he won't see me for a very long time. But I know you watch this episode, and then I'm going to say this and get on to our last two articles. But Steve Bannon was on, and he's like, we got to take a stand in Taiwan or you won't get a Ford F-150 for a while. I said, okay, let's bring manufacturing back. Let's end corporate tax and everything and incentivize people. Why don't you want to be in your home country? We speak in, like, really help these corporations to come back, and let's bring manufacturing back to the U.S. Let's take the yuan. Let's buy up a bunch of it and short it and teach them a lesson. So maybe we can get the Uyghurs, some relief. Let's leverage pressure. Let's boycott them. But let's not take a military stand in Taiwan. Because, yeah, you could lose Ford F-150s. But I don't want a nuclear war. I don't want NATO and the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, to go at it. So that kind of, I'm like, slow down. Now, I don't know if you have a different opinion on me on that, but I don't want Ukraine. I don't want Taiwan. I'm not saying I want bad things. I don't want anything bad to happen to them, but I don't think we should make a stand there. I think
in Taiwan.
No, I don't want to. I get people are gonna, like, Tim would probably not like this. I get some Republicans would be like, "Come on, Kareem, got to make a stand."
Well, I think it depends. Okay, because I think Taiwan isn't as simple as people make it seem, right? Same thing with Ukraine. Now, let's not forget Trump's policy on Ukraine. Not every aspect, but the majority of his policy on Ukraine was like, okay, let's not get involved in Ukraine or NATO, but let's send a shitload of weapons, arms, missiles to Ukraine. So in the event they do get invaded by Russia, and they try to get annexed as well as Crimea, as they did with Crimea, they can defend themselves. So we don't have to jump in. Let's arm them to a T and give them billions of dollars in weapons and billions of dollars to make weapons, and they protect themselves. Let's not bring boots on the ground, right? Let's avoid that at all costs. Now, I think the same thing could be true with Taiwan. My thing is this, and
I have a problem with that, though.
I'm not like absolute on it, but I sort of think that, okay, let's take Ukraine, let's take Taiwan. We have somewhere around 4,250 nukes. Russia has somewhere around 6,000 or over 5,500 nukes in their stockpile. Let's say we give 8 nukes to Taiwan and Ukraine each. Now, that's nothing out of the stockpile. Listen, if we give them nukes, we don't have to do anything. We don't have to put boots on the ground. Do you think that China and Russia would invade each country when they have nukes. It's almost like a mutually assured thing where you don't even have to do anything. Just give them nukes. Maybe that's crazy. It's just an idea that I had. Just give them nukes. What are they going to do?
Okay, fine. I'm not actually against that. Same reason I say Ron should have one because they're neighbor. But here's the only thing I'm scared of giving certain, especially with what happened.
Yeah.
If you give people, depending on what you give them, if you just gave them something to stop that, just like a nuke, maybe I could slightly consider that. But if they get taken over, guess who gets the weapon systems?
Well, they already have. Well, the thing is, Kareem, is I get that. That's what someone else kind of pushed back. But I'm like, China and Russia already have. Well, China not as much, but Russia has a lot of nukes. They get 7 nukes. Okay, they only have 7 more than the 5,000 they already did. Yeah, so it doesn't really matter. And my thing is like this: I think every country should have nukes, every single one.
Yeah.
If it was up to me, I would take our stockpile and divide it to give to at least 100, 150 countries because I think every country with nukes, with highly advanced, it's the quote from the Bible that Jordan Peterson talks about that says, "The meek shall inherit the world," which he sort of translated into those who have swords and know how to use them, but don't shall inherit the world. Right? Those who have the ability to be very dangerous and be destructive, but they don't. Now, those are powerful people. The people who have the ability to destroy, but they don't. They save it. They don't use it, right? So I think it's that sort of philosophy with all these countries. Like, if everyone had equal weapons, maybe some countries had more, but if all the time while weapons are advancing in the U.S., they get equally, or I should say sort of equally decentralized and sent to all the countries, I think it would do a lot of good, but not necessarily like intentionally. But think about it, though. Like, if countries had nukes, every single country had a nuke. What if Iraq had 7 nukes, 6 nukes? You know, whether you like nukes, like whether you have something morally against a nuke, whether you think that implies danger, which, as we have seen, it's been almost 100 years. It doesn't, right? Not one drop since Hiroshima. I mean, that's pretty damn impressive, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's good. I understand what you're saying here. Maybe they should develop. I'd prefer they develop their own. You know, it's something. It's an idea I can play with. I'm not saying I'm completely against it, but
I hear you. That's enough.
I'm just the only problem I have is like, okay, there's another, and I'll get to the next 2 stories, but my only counter to that is this. A lot of people like Mint Press and stuff. They're like, hey, when we sold Saudis weapons, they use them. It looks bad. And then people are like, oh, who sold America? And that's not good. I don't want to be like, all right, hey, I'm selling nukes to everybody, and someone is going to be crazy. I don't know if it's Kim Jong-un. I don't know who it is. And someone
we wouldn't. Listen, the thing is they already have nukes, though. What I'm saying is, okay, listen.
You want to give them. What do you want to do then specifically?
So with Ukraine, I'm just talking about Ukraine and Taiwan in this specific sense.
Not all countries, but
yeah,
do.
Like, just give them some nukes. Maybe you could. I'm not saying that it's like you just give them for free necessarily. There should be a contract. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's a way to prevent it's a way to prevent, not only threats, but ground attacks from China and from Russia, right? Without having to do anything, without having to drop missiles, without having to get soldiers on the ground to defend Ukraine. I think it's a sort of, how do you say, a meta way. It's a meta assurance of safety, not absolute, but how many countries that have had nukes have been invaded? Tell me. How many countries?
None. Honestly, I think that's the reason, and a lot of people argue that why Gaddafi, got run over and why they didn't do anything in Korea. I did look this up I just Googled this, I Googled, does Ukraine have nukes and does Taiwan have nukes? And actually, I found Ukraine has the world's third.
Oh, they do? Really?
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. Mine is Ukraine on the nukes. What about Taiwan?
No, not that I know of.
Okay, so there we go.
So
you got to give Taiwan some nukes. It's
okay,
simple,
you know what?
That's my foreign policy.
You know what? I'd be okay with that, but don't take a stand. And get out of NATO. And that's actually what I want to, segue into. I just wanted to hit one thing I wanted to hit on is that Ukraine despite both countries being armed to the teeth with nukes, they can go. They can make it fall.
Really, they're third. Ukraine is third. So
unless this is wrong,
how many nukes do they have? I'm curious.
176 intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBM, and 100 or 1,200.
Wow. And whoa. So
That's
that means that changes things. I'm not entirely sure if Russia's going to invade then. That changes things from my perspective. I didn't know they had nukes, man. I don't know.
I didn't know they did either, but like, I don't. If I had to guess, something's going to happen because
that's kind of scary, dude. Because if Russia does invade and threaten their sovereignty, listen, I'm not saying that I would nuke my country, like another country, but I'm just saying that's different. That's never happened as far as I'm concerned, right? So I don't know.
I don't know what's gonna. Yeah, this is a real tense situation. I know some people say, "Oh, this is just the corporate media." I think it's a pretty bad geopolitical situation. Something needs to be done somewhere. And look, I'm all for like private citizens coming up with good solutions, whatever it is. I'm not saying don't do anything around the world ever, but I would just like to see private citizens coming up with these things. Just like, hey, if you're going to give them nukes or run guns to Cuba, have private citizens come up with these solutions. Still not the government. The government will mess it up somehow. I'm not saying private people don't, but I look at the public choice option. So Ukraine sees no sign of Russia withdrawing troops from the border. Russia has made no move to withdraw troops. It has amassed at the border with Ukraine, but there is no sign that a Russian invasion is imminent. A senior Ukrainian official said Wednesday. I can't pronounce this name, but I'll try. Olsky Dalanov. Does that sound right? Secretary of Ukraine's Security Defense Council told Reuters in an interview that Russia had 92,000 troops at the frontier, but need many more if it wants to invade Ukraine. Dalanov said Kiev remained concerned about the military buildup and that there had been no big change in the situation since a video call on December 7th, in which U.S. President Joe Brandon worried Russian President Vladimir Putin not to invade Ukraine. I'm sure he's super scared. Nothing has changed, Dalanov said, whose powerful council brings together senior military and security officials. There has been some increase in troop numbers, not critical enough for us to say that this invasion is going to happen now. He said Russia would need at least 500,000 to 600,000 soldiers at the border in order to keep the situation under control in the event of an offensive. And he also said Russia could increase the troops very quickly at any moment, but they do need more than 24 hours to bring the troops to mount an invasion. So I don't know what's going to happen here.
Dude, this is a first, man. That's a first. A country being invaded that has nukes? I don't think that's ever happened.
Yeah, well, I have to think about it. There probably has to be one that I'm not thinking of, but yeah, there. I mean, yeah, maybe it is. Maybe I'm wrong. Last but not least, I just want to bring attention to this. Journalism is not a crime. I don't care what you say. If you think a journalist is bad, don't read their work, or tell people on Reddit and Quora and everywhere on the internet that their work sucks. Like that Facebook journalist who said there should be more censorship. Boop. Like everybody laughed at her. I don't know anyone that's like, oh yeah, please censor me harder.
Harder, Daddy, harder. I need more censorship, please, Zucker.
There are people out there. I just don't want to meet them. So, was the U.S. authorities? First of all, he's not a U.S. citizen. Why do we? This is stupid. But U.S. authorities, when their latest bid to extradite WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, which is bad. And this is on CNN. I'm not endorsing CNN. I hate CNN.
Why is it bad, though?
I'm
asking truly. Listen, I'm not fully. I've heard people say it's bad, it's good. I'm just curious to know your perspective. Why are so many people saying that this extradition is not a good thing?
My opinion, because he's an Australian. Right, Mike? He comes from Australia. He's not even he's not even a citizen. Whether you think that's important or not, I do. I think like if someone from my country or my state does something bad, I should do it. But if somebody from another country, is doing something wrong, they should be tried on the basis of whatever that thing is. Now, I can think of exceptions to that in very, very like crazy edge cases, but I don't know.
So what you're basically saying, if I understand you correctly, that there's a fear that, well, for one, he's not a citizen, so it's like another sovereign state removing someone from their sovereign state,
Yes.
and then bringing him here. Then they could do sort of maybe some sort of cruel and unusual punishments, or something like that. So you want him to stay in his home state where he belongs. I sort of get that perspective, but yeah, it does seem weird. But aren't the charges, or I'm not saying that they're justified charges, but the quote unquote charges, right, that have to do with stuff in the United States, quote unquote. I'm not saying that is true. I'm just saying allegedly that it has to do with emails and stuff in the United States. So the idea is that, like, because of the Manning emails, I think it is that he's being taken to the United States. I don't know. It just seems a little weird to me, man.
Yeah, to me, that doesn't make any sense. Like if I go to Mexico or if I go to another place and commit a crime, then you can say, okay, I'm going to judge it. But
he didn't even, that is true though. He didn't even commit the crime in the United States.
No. Yeah. This is weird. It's just like, it doesn't make, to me, I mean, I'm not saying I'm a completely logical person. I do a lot of weird stuff. I come up with a lot of crazy things. Probably this election, I'll be like that Wookiee that had the Ron Paul "Don't Tread on Me" with the Gadsden flag thing. I do some I'm not Vermin Supreme weird, but I do, I have my fair share of stuff that people probably cringe at. But this doesn't make any sense to me. As I said, he's a 50-year-old Australian. What did he get charged under? Oh, the Espionage Act.
Oh,
gotta love it. In publishing classified military and diplomatic cables. Yeah, but they were also committing war crimes and breaking the law. So, to me,
good luck with that. There's a reason why Snowden's in Russia, man. It ain't because Russia's a safe haven. It's because the Espionage Act is a guarantee you're going to prison. Guarantee. You don't get to speak at your own trial. You don't get to speak at your own FISA court. No. And you literally, your freedom of speech to testify on the acts in which you're being accused of committing is not allowed. And the court that a lot of this stuff is done in is kept private and secret, and there's no video cameras. There's not even sketch artists they're allowed in there.
And if I'm being honest, as they said in the old USSR, I don't even think you'd go to prison. I think there's some people pretty high up that would say, hey, use some wet tactics. Take care of this. You can interpret what I'm saying, and you'd probably be right.
They Epstein them.
Exactly. Oh, hey, a pillow. Okay. Yeah. Oh, hey, Snowden and Assange are back. Hey, how you doing, man?
Snowden, it turns out Assange hung himself with no arms. It's the most miraculous thing that's ever happened. He hung himself when he had no arms and legs. I mean, they'll say anything. When that McAfee stuff happened, I was like, yeah, this is, I could be wrong. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he killed himself. Maybe he was lying. Maybe he staged it all. But I do find that highly unlikely. And I think some sort of Mexican operative got into the jail and they killed him. They killed himself. You get what I'm saying?
Well, okay. The only thing I don't know is, was it a U.S. op or was it another? Was it MI6? Was it?
That's true. Yeah.
Was it? Probably was an intelligence agency guy, because those are the ones that move in the shadows there. But the president of Haiti, McAfee said, if I die, someone, it wasn't me who did it.
Make sure I don't Epstein myself. He said something along those lines.
Yeah, which is kind of funny, but that's what I think would happen to him. That's why I say get rid of. But what's happening to him now is this. Judges ordered that the case should be returned to Westminster Magistrates Court with direction that a judge should send the case to the UK Home Secretary, who will decide whether Assange should be extradited to the United States. Right now, he is being held at the Belmarsh prison in London. The thing that sucks is that, and as far as I'm concerned, he's wanted in the U.S. on 18 criminal charges.
I know, dude. They're gonna literally keep him in here forever.
Yeah.
This is cruel and unusual punishment. And I get he's in the UK, but still, dude, he hasn't even faced his trial yet.
No,
he's been in fucking prison, solitary confinement, and jail for over a decade without facing his trial, dude. It's so crazy, man.
If I'm being honest, I don't think he should have to face a trial. I think he should get a medal. But if he gets convicted, he gets up to 175 years in prison. And he was already held up in the Ecuadorian embassy.
Yeah, for like 5 years or something.
7 years. For 7
years. Wow.
If CNN is right, which I don't like them, but Assange did get in a court naturalized citizen of Ecuador, which was given to him in 2017 by Lenin Moreno, and people are saying that should be revoked. Look, I will say this. There's a lot of things in journalists that I don't agree with. I don't think he committed a crime. I think the only crime that was committed is to treat journalists like this, because there is no good news outlets. And as far as I'm concerned, the people who will tell you he's a bad dude, well, look at what they're doing. Is Don Lemon and Cuomo really great role models? And
I mean, look at the two CNN producers who were just arrested on child trafficking charges and basic pedophilia charges, or talking about very sexually explicit stuff of underage kids. I mean, oh my God, CNN is so terrible, terrible.
They're so terrible, and these are the guys who be like, Assange is a bad dude.
Yeah, they're the most unethical fucking news organization I've ever seen. You have Don Lemon, who is colluding with Jussie Smollett, and he literally said in the trial that he was texting him and he was letting them know about the reports and what was going on, and that the police thought that he staged it, which he did. And then you have Cuomo, who literally faked a coronavirus quarantine. That's just an example of a psychopathic trait right there. Faked it for no reason, but fine. Let's say CNN told him to do it, so it was the media companies. That was their idea. Then on top of that, he was colluding with his brother and even writing written reports that his brother was supposed to write, but it was really his brother writing. He was writing the Governor Cuomo's responses, and he was following the victims who accused his brother, following them and keeping notes and trying to gather dirt on them. You have one producer who flew, and this is explicit, but he flew, him and the adopted mother of a child were sexually abusing this child, bringing him from state to state to Connecticut to literally watch the mother abuse her adopted kid. And this happened consistently. They were flying this child over with their mother. She was charged as well to sexually abuse her. You have another producer who Veritas just leaked that was speaking, leaked video, and that said that, started talking about little girls and how they like to see them like this in the CNN office. So, I mean, all that together. I mean, like, wow.
The most trusted name in news and in the cabal. Some of that's some pretty dark stuff, and we can keep delving into that. I definitely want to keep doing that, and we will keep covering Ghislaine Maxwell. But with all those stories, I think we got a lot of good quality content. So, guys, if you enjoyed this with me and Daniel Bitro, check out the LP Mises Caucus here. You can keep being part of the decentralized revolution. Also, if you head over to YouTube on them internets, you can go to Daniel B. All you got to do is type in Daniel B like I did here, and you can find Daniel's work here. You can find all of his podcasts, which he's done some with myself, some with Joe Walsh, different philosophies and stuff like that. Coverage of the Virginia election, if you want to see that. Some stuff about Tesla, different things that I think you'll really find interesting. Also, if you'd like to actually view our stuff, you can do so by going to the Essential Libertarians here with my YouTube page, where you'll find all our different shows, all the different guests, and some great information for libertarians. Everyone, this has been the Essential Libertarians with Kareem and Daniel Bitro, giving you the tools you need for self-governance. Thank you for watching.